Wondering which of South Africa's major retail banks ranks the best on social media? Capitec. That's according to Brand's Eye annual South African Banking Sentiment Index, which assessed consumer sentiment towards South Africa's major retail banks. Joining us now to discuss other banks and how they did is Nick Ray, Brand Eye's Chief Marketing Officer. Nick, good to have you on the show. Definitely you've heard about business sentiment across the country, as I have to say, that we did see last week. But just give us a sense of what the digital space brings to the banking space and why this particular study was even sanctioned.
Well, this is actually our fourth year of the study, and we look to really understand how South African consumers are perceiving their bank's services and how they express their opinions about those products and services online. We tracked just over 1.7 million social media comments about banks, the top 5 banks in South Africa, from the 31st of September last year through to the end of August this year. And we found that in general, South Africans are not happy with their banks. All the banks except for Capitec had a net negative sentiment, and that means that more people are complaining about them than praising them.
Right. I think one thing that stands out here is the fact that you do highlight a need for innovation. Now, this is a word that is as vague as they come. Innovation could range from Safaricom's M-Pesa to something like opening up an account without going to the bank. What exactly are the metrics here and the methodology for you to assess innovation?
Well, for this year's study, we did a digital index, which looked at the major topics driving digital conversation amongst the banks. And we looked at business and technological innovation. We looked at the app. We looked at conversation around online banking and digital safety and security. So those were the main 4 digital topics that we tracked in the study and looked at consumer opinion about those topics. We found that F&B was completely dominant, both in terms of the share of voice. They had almost 36% of the conversation, and they also were the only bank to have a positive net sentiment of 42.6%. So that means that I think consumers are really engaging with the innovations this year, which included biometric ATMs, ability to open a bank account with a selfie, as well as the ability to do some home affairs, their branches and their ATM network.
Right, Nick, let's just talk more about that particular bank, FNB. You did mention that some sentiment there coming through, but just last week this was announced the best business bank in South Africa. This is 6 years in a row. And then Capitec comes on to actually win the big prize here, at least according to your study. Isn't this a mixed bag? I'm kind of sitting on the fence here. Or is one mutually exclusive from the other?
No, I don't think they are. I think Capitec has had a very consistent set of delivery, particularly around delivering on banking basics, getting the operational stuff right, getting the products right, and getting the pricing right. And that's seen them lead our study for the last 4 years. But they had a 9% decline this year in net sentiment, and that, in our view, is largely based on them being caught up in the Viceroy scandal. FNB has had a very good year with an increase of almost 16% in net sentiment for consumers, and I think largely driven by that business and technological innovation, and some solid marketing as well.
Another bank that actually stands out is Standard Bank. Now, lots of negative sentiment on this one. Just give us a sense of what you did discover.
Yeah, Standard Bank is now the least liked bank in South Africa, surpassing Absa from the dark days of 2017. They had a minus 72% net sentiment in the digital index, making them, from a digital products and services perspective, the least liked bank in South Africa. And that was largely driven by a bunch of uptime issues. Both their online banking and their app went down on a number of critical points during the year, which really frustrated consumers. They also haven't done much in the way of digital innovation, unlike their competitors in FNB and even Absa, who released WhatsApp Banking recently in line with their rebrand. So, yeah, I think a lot of Standard Bank's woes is actually down to operational failure, not down to branding or ethics, but rather about how consumers are engaging with their basic products and services and not finding what they expected.
Nick, I'm going to read here from your release. Brand's Eye retrieved close to 1.7 public social media posts from, well, these were about South African banks from the 1st of September 2017 to the 31st of August 2018. How do you do away with bots or maybe people who are paid to tarnish the image of another brand? I ask that because we've seen this in the past. And do you have a metric to make sure that you do away with, for lack of a better word, paid swords?
Yeah, we absolutely can. In fact, in this study, we counted all the bots in that they do drive public opinion. And for the purpose of this analysis, it was relevant to include what they were saying. And I don't think bots are a major factor in the South African banking conversation. In fact, of those 1.7 million social media posts, a vast majority were unique authors, i.e. someone who was only saying something once or maybe twice. So I don't think bots had a major factor in this study, but what we have done historically, for example, when monitoring elections, is only counting authors' opinions once. So even if there were a bot, for example, speaking out in favor of Donald Trump, we would only count their opinion once we were trying to get their sentiment and not the total effect of their impact on the conversation.